what's next as talks with Iran failed. Markets inch upward after a dip as President Trump ramps up pressure on Iran. Oil tops $100 a barrel with the U.S. Navy set to enforce a decisive blockade. An oil tanker bound for China turned away from the Strait of Hormuz, how the U.S. blockade is working. Congressman Eric Swalwell suspends his campaign for California governor amid sexual assault allegations. The move follows growing pressure from within the Democratic Party. Lawmakers returned this week to a dicey DHS funding battle. Will the House see a successful vote to partially fund the government? NASA's Artemis II astronauts are back on Earth after a historic mission around the moon. Now the focus is shifting to what comes next as the agency prepares for a return to the lunar surface.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. President Trump talking to reporters on the issue of Iran after talks failed over the weekend. Joining us now live in studio is NTD's White House correspondent, Iris Tao. Iris, good afternoon. What is the latest?
Sure, Don. So actually just moments ago, President Trump stepped out of the Oval Office to talk to reporters as, of course, we know that a U.S. blockade of Iranian ports in the Strait of Hormuz has just gone into effect as of 10 a.m. this morning. It's been now in effect for a few hours. The president posting on Truth Social earlier, really highlighting the fact that Iran's Navy has been eliminated and that they have no offensive capabilities to fight back. Also warning that if any of Iran's remaining attack ships get close anywhere to the blockade, they will be immediately eliminated. And President Trump, talking to reporters, is saying that the U.S. is implementing this blockade to make sure that Iran cannot blackmail the world. Watch.
We can't let a country blackmail or extort the world, because that's what they're doing. They're really blackmailing the world. We're not going to let that happen. And you know, the amazing thing is we don't. Can you believe this? We don't use the Strait. We don't need the Strait. We have our own oil and gas, much more than we need.
Of course, now all eyes are on what's next, both when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz and when it comes to the deal that was failed, of course, over the weekend when Vice President J.D. Vance led a group to Pakistan. Of course, we're still waiting on more details about what exactly happened and what's next from the administration.
So, Iris, what are the implications of this U.S. blockade and what's next between the U.S. and Iran?
Sure. So as we know, President Trump this morning really emphasizing that the U.S. is not going to be impacted to a large extent by this blockade, as one, the U.S. does not rely on the Strait of Hormuz as opposed to, for example, countries like China, which largely rely on the Strait for their own oil imports. We also know that a blockade, for example, will also eliminate Iran's ability to really implement what they were attempting to do by imposing a toll on ships passing through the Strait, as now, as we know, the U.S. is really preventing ships from going to these Iranian ports to get the oil and, in a way, trying to economically really sanction Iran as well through this means. But of course, the president, when it comes to what's next, this morning telling reporters that there's still room for a deal, but Iran has rejected previously over the weekend the U.S. demand for them to give up their nuclear ambitions. That said, the president says he's confident that eventually Iran will agree to that. Watch.
And I think they will agree to it. I'm almost sure of it. In fact, I am sure of it. If they don't agree, there's no deal. There'll never be a deal. Iran will not have a nuclear weapon, and we're going to get the dust back. We'll get it back either. We'll get it back from them or we'll take it.
It doesn't mean, though, that a deal is an only solution to the end of this conflict. President Trump telling reporters over the weekend that he doesn't really care if there's a deal, as Iran's military capabilities have now largely been diminished.
And Iris, before we let you go here, President Trump received a DoorDash order today at the White House, and he addressing the economy. Tell us more about that.
Sure. So we witnessed a very interesting scene today outside the Oval Office when the president really stepped out and took a DoorDash order from a Dasher. It was a McDonald's order. And actually, that was an occasion to celebrate the administration's no tax on tips policy. Specifically, this Dasher is from Arkansas and who earned $11,000 in tips last year and now not having to pay taxes for it. And her coming to the White House and really thanking the president in person for what he's done to help out her family. And she's got a husband who's fighting cancer. And here's part of that exchange today. Watch.
It has helped my family out immensely, and I definitely appreciate it.
People are receiving more money from their tax refunds than they ever thought possible.
Are the White House good tippers? Do you know?
Wait.
Potentially. Yes, very.
Mr. President, can I ask you something?
That's good. Thank you. You reminded me.
And Don, when it comes to the domestic economy and the war in Iran, of course, a lot of Americans care about the impact of oil prices, what the war is going to do with their gas prices and their daily lives. And the president has repeatedly emphasized that oil prices and gas prices will come down for Americans once this conflict in Iran is over.
Okay, all right, Iris, thank you for the report.
Thank you.
And Wall Street opened lower today after weekend talks between the U.S. and Iran failed to produce a deal to end the war, raising fears of renewed market volatility. The Dow falling 198 points at the open and S&P 500 slipping to 10 points and the Nasdaq dropping 53 points. All three indexes inched upward in the afternoon trading. Oil prices moving back above $100 a barrel as the U.S. Navy prepared to blockade traffic to and from Iranian ports through the Strait of Hormuz. Brent crude jumping nearly 7% to just over $101 a barrel, while U.S. crude rose more than 7% to above $103. President Trump warning that oil and gas prices could stay elevated through November's midterm elections. The Justice Department is warning it will prosecute anyone trading sanctioned Iranian oil. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche saying on X, the DOJ fully supports President Trump and the military. And British Prime Minister Keir Starmer says Britain will not be drawn into the Iran war or support a blockade of Iranian ports in the Strait of Hormuz. The Prime Minister says Britain has minesweepers in the region and UK military capability is focused on getting the strait fully open. Britain and France are now preparing to lead a possible multinational defensive naval mission.
I can confirm today that together with President Macron, I will convene a summit of leaders this week to drive forward the international effort we have built in recent weeks, bringing together dozens of countries to ensure freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. The summit will be focused on two things. First, diplomatic efforts to bring pressure to bear for a negotiated end to the conflict and for the strait to be opened. Second, military planning to provide assurance to shipping as soon as a stable environment can be established.
The Prime Minister says it's in the UK's national interest to stay out of the war. He also says the current ceasefire is fragile, but diplomacy is the right path. Starmer adding that Lebanon should be included in the ceasefire. He stresses the Iran war has caused great economic damage in the UK, that freedom of navigation is vital and must be restored with no conditions and no tolls. Vice President J.D. Vance said no agreement was reached with Iran after marathon negotiations in Pakistan. Joining us now is David Wormser, analyst for Middle East Affairs at the Center for Security Policy. David, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. So it looks like Iran did not accept U.S. terms, and Vance thinking maybe Iran overplaying its hand. What do you think was Iran's strategy going into these negotiations?
Well, I think it's complex, but Iran, I think, first of all, its strategy is based on appreciation of the situation that I think is flawed. If you look around the world, most of the world seems to think the United States was defeated. They're buying a lot of the propaganda out there. The Iranians are listening to them. They're also listening to the domestic opposition to the president in the United States, and they're basing their entire policy on that and not on what really President Trump is saying and what Vice President Vance was saying. And I think that you're seeing a disconnect between the two sides on that regard. The second thing is the Iranians are somewhat in a bind. They need those straits to levy those fees on those ships, which is, of course, something we will not accept. That's $2 million a ship. There's about 140 ships a day. You're talking over $100 billion. Iran's GDP is $375 billion before the war. They probably lost about 30% of capacity in the war. So they need that money in order just to stay partly even to where they were, let alone the fact that if the straits remain closed, that 80% of their economy was based on the oil industry. They don't get that either. So you're talking about an economic collapse in Iran. At the same time, they can't give in to the United States because it shows such weakness. And a totalitarian regime like that, if they show weakness, it's the end of them. So I think what their strategy is now to buy time for a week or two while they import Chinese man-pad missiles, hoping that when it restarts, they can perhaps shoot down a couple planes, get a few hostages. That will shut down America's strategy. Perhaps a bunch of missiles can be launched at the beginning to kill a lot of Israelis, project a sense of victory, and also to import from abroad a lot of fighters that will support the regime. We're seeing a lot of Iraqi militias, Afghani militias showing up now in every street corner in Iran. So I think that's their strategy, is just to get through the next round with one or two victories, or acquire some chits, like a hostage or two, a pilot or two, and then hopefully leverage that for long-term survival.
Okay, so then how much time do they have? Because the U.S. is enforcing a blockade, right, in the Strait of Hormuz. And former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo saying that this is taking aim at Iran's jugular. So how much time do they have?
Not a lot. We're talking days, maybe a week or two at most. First of all, the ceasefire ends anyway in 8 days. So if there's no agreement, the ceasefire is technically off, which means the Israelis or the United States could begin to, whenever they see anything they don't like, they can strike, like the man-pad shipments or so forth. The second thing is the economy is really running out of everything in Iran. We're beginning to see lines for basic goods. So I don't think the regime in Iran has that much time until this is somewhat broken, until they deliver a different reality. So I think we're talking days. Also, they're counting on the president holding off. If the president really feels this is going nowhere, he's shown before he's not going to stick to his own deadlines. He can preempt earlier. Same with the Israelis. You also have Lebanon, which is right now, they're waiting for the negotiations tomorrow. But after that, all bets are off there. So it's a very complex situation. But things point in the direction that we're just not at the end of this yet.
Okay, so if you're saying the Iranian regime has days, do they see this? And if they do, does that mean we're going to see a deal in a few days? Because otherwise, I mean, what you laid out, the consequences could be dire.
Well, you could see a deal, but that would also lead to two things. First of all, humiliation, because it would be obvious that it would be a catastrophic defeat. Now, remember, we couldn't even come to an agreement in Pakistan on the very first issue, which is the nuclear dust, the 60% enriched uranium. We haven't even gotten to the point of enrichment. We haven't even gotten to the point of the Straits of Hormuz. We haven't even gotten to the point of the missiles and disarming the missiles, and a larger ceasefire in the region where you have Hamas and you have the Hezbollah and so forth. So we're so far still from an agreement. I don't think the Iranians and the United States really have a common ground here that's going to get there. So I think that we're probably looking more likely in the next week at a resumption of hostilities. I would look to the precedent of 2023 after the first ceasefire between Hamas and Israel, Hamas being very much an Iranian type organization at that point. When they realized the ceasefire was going to end, they took the first shot rather than wait for the Israelis to start it or for it to just crumble. They actually preempted it early. And I wouldn't rule that out with Iran right now.
Okay, do you see any circumstances where Iran actually gives up its nuclear program? Are there any circumstances of this happening?
Look, it's hard to imagine that a nuclear program that's utterly destroyed is not conceded by a regime. But at the same time, it just shows, I don't think they will, because at the end of the day, they do want to keep that uranium. They do want to keep the right to enrich, not because it's an inherent right to any nation. It's not. It's only a right to nations that sign additional protocols of the IAEA. But they still don't have an inherent right to it. So it's not a question of national sovereignty. Switzerland doesn't have a right to enrichment unless it signs these protocols. they've really believed that their long-term survival and their long-term agenda depends on these sorts of weapons, the missiles, the long-range missiles, the intercontinental missiles, and ultimately the nuclear point to them. So I don't think they can really concede on that. They may sort of agree to certain things, but they will not really abide by that agreement. We've had agreements with them before, and they've cheated on them immediately. The 2005 Paris Agreement, within weeks, we caught them cheating on it. I don't think they're really going to be able to give up on this for real, and if they do, probably within weeks, we'll find out.
Okay, so I mean, to summarize what you've said in this interview, Iran has maybe a few days left. It's not willing to concede to negotiation terms from the U.S. as a show of strength. They can't show weakness. The Strait of Hormuz has been blockaded. The U.S. has imposed blockade on the Strait of Hormuz. Does Iran have any cards left to play?
Well, its cards left are, first of all, deterrence, which is the fact that they say that they may destroy all the ports on the Arab side of the Gulf, and they would destroy the energy industry, which would send oil prices through the roof. And they know that that is a deeply sensitive issue for the president and for the West. So that's one thing. The second thing is they keep the straits on their end closed because they know that that also increases energy prices. So I think part of the cards of what they feel that the world opinion and the narrative, their Lego war videos and the global sort of social media and global mood is that they have a lot of cards left, they're powerful, and that America really can't afford or want a war. And they bounce off of domestic opposition on this and allies not participating and so forth. But at the end of the day, these are very intangible things. They don't have a lot of very, very powerful assets left. The United States holds the cards here.
Okay, just one final question. What are the options then? Because you said earlier you don't see Iran giving up its nuclear program. So what are the options for the U.S. if this is the case, if Iran refuses to give up its nuclear ambitions?
Well, you could see two paths here, or maybe, and they're not necessarily contradictory. One is that we would resume the war, and then we're probably in a different war this time, where it will be much more aggressively regime destabilizing than the last war. Not fully the nature of the threat the president suggested of the end of civilization, but I think you will see very aggressive action to terminate the authority of the regime. The second thing could be that we decide that we will just live with this and reserve the right to strike anytime, anywhere we want. So that if we see them importing more manpads and it becomes a problem, we'll strike it. If we see them rebuilding their nuclear program, we'll strike it. If the Israelis see that there's riots and demonstrations and they're mobilizing the IRGC to slaughter the citizens again, they'll show up at the intersections with their drones and kill the IRGC. So it's sort of a ceasefire without a ceasefire, or it's a stagnant situation without a ceasefire. That could be an option, or you could see a sequence of both.
Okay, very insightful, David. Thank you for speaking with us today.
Sure.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today saying that Israeli forces are operating deeper inside southern Lebanon. Netanyahu says they're creating a security barrier aimed at pushing armed groups away from the border. He adds they're also dismantling terrorist infrastructure near Israeli communities.
We are talking about a solid, deeper security zone that both prevents the danger of infiltration and pushes back the anti-tank missile threat. They are also dealing with the terror villages that were adjacent to us. There, every terror position, and there are many of them, has simply been flattened.
Netanyahu also saying that Israel supports President Trump's, quote, strong stance to impose a naval blockade on Iran. Netanyahu says he spoke to Vice President J.D. Vance yesterday while Vance was on a plane returning from negotiations in Islamabad. He also said Israel backs the U.S. position that Iran must remove all of its enriched nuclear material and must refrain from any enrichment within Iran for several decades. Congressman Eric Swalwell suspends his campaign for California governor amid sexual assault allegations. The move follows growing pressure from within the Democratic Party. Lawmakers return this week to a dicey DHS funding battle. Will the House see a successful vote to partially fund the department? More news after this break. Don't go away.
Whispered across generations, a hidden secret unveils the essence of longevity and vitality, a timeless legend regarding energy and wonder. Rooted in ancient health wisdom, we proudly introduce Pure Tang Black Ginseng, a 100% natural organic energy drink made from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng. It takes 2,260 days and nights from seed to growth, undergoing a meticulous 9-step process of steaming and drying. Black ginseng reaches its full potency, enriched with ginsenoside RG3 and enhanced absorption efficiency. No sugar, no caffeine, no artificial ingredients. Experience the pure natural power of Pure Tang Black Ginseng. Nourish your body, strengthen your immunity, and boost your energy. To order Pure Tang Black Ginseng, please visit puretang.com.
I was a young dad of 3 amazing kids. I was finally following my dreams. Just when you feel like life is starting to come together, you get kind of hit in the face. I was born with a congenital heart defect and had open heart surgery as a kid. I was supposed to go to the heart doctor once a year, and I finally went. He listened to my heart, and I'll never forget, he sat back and he said, yeah, it's time for open heart surgery, or you risk your aorta rupturing, and that's it. I was scared out of my mind. The night before my open heart surgery, I made a goodbye video for my kids. Be strong. Take care of your mom. I love you guys.
Seeing, all the kids hug him goodbye and hoping that they were going to be able to hug him again.
I love you. But I did make it, thanks to the work of the American Heart Association. So that's why I'm asking you to join me. Please call now or go to helpheart.org. For only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can help get the next person trained in CPR, get the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care, as well as fund the next medical breakthrough like these heart valves that helped save my life. When you give $19 a month with your credit card, we'll send you this special t-shirt to show you're a part of our community of monthly donors.
I'm most grateful that I get to have a husband that I get to grow old with, and a husband that gets to be there for his children.
I believe without the American Heart Association, I would not be here today. If this can happen to me, it can happen to you, it can happen to anybody. Your donation can literally help save a life. Please call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org now to become a monthly donor.
War Secretary Pete Hegseth is welcoming Indonesia's defense minister to the Pentagon with an honor cordon. The two countries will discuss allowing U.S. military oversight in Indonesian airspace. The U.S. is seeking blanket overnight access for American military aircraft through Indonesian airspace. This would allow access for emergency operations, crisis response missions, and jointly agreed military exercises. Media reports say the president of Indonesia has approved the proposal, but no deal has been reached yet. Indonesia's defense ministry says the two countries are still discussing the letter of intent, and only a preliminary draft is being discussed internally. The draft is neither final nor binding. The U.S. military says it carried out 2 deadly strikes targeting drug trafficking vessels in the Eastern Pacific. The operation hitting boats, it says, were linked to designated terrorist organizations along known smuggling routes. Southern Command says 5 narco-terrorists were killed in the strikes, with 1 survivor. The military says no U.S. personnel were injured in the operation. The strikes are part of a campaign that started last year to disrupt drug trafficking networks in the region. A federal judge has dismissed President Trump's defamation lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal. The president sued the paper after it published a story alleging the president's signature appeared on a birthday card sent to Jeffrey Epstein. The Miami-based district judge ruled that President Trump did not meet the actual malice standard that public figures must clear for defamation. The judge wrote that the Journal's reporters reached out to the president for comment and published his denial. President Trump was seeking $10 billion in damages. The judge added that the president could file an amended version of the lawsuit by April 27th. Lawmakers returned this week to a funding battle for the Department of Homeland Security, now in its 59th day. The Senate has already acted, but getting a successful vote through the House could be more challenging. President Trump giving the GOP the go-ahead only immigration enforcement bill. NTD's Melina Weisskopf has the details.
House lawmakers could vote this week on a bill to partially fund the Department of Homeland Security. Republicans are resorting to a two-track approach to skirt Democrat opposition to ICE funding. Under the plan, most of the DHS will be funded, and Republicans will use a party line process to fund immigration enforcement agencies until the end of President Trump's term. Separating immigration enforcement from the DHS has drawn pushback from some House conservatives.
The bottom line is this deal is bad for America. It's bad for Americans. The president has already said.
The House Freedom Caucus is instead calling for Republicans to use the second Republican-only bill to fund all of the DHS for the rest of President Trump's term to ensure Democrats can never again take our nation's security hostage. It's unclear if House Speaker Mike Johnson will have a unified majority to partially fund the DHS, though it could still pass if enough Democrats approve it. This comes as pay for DHS workers is in limbo. President Trump signing an order to get DHS workers back pay, but future paychecks aren't guaranteed. A DHS memo warned workers that future checks will be paid once DHS funding is restored. While the clock is ticking to end the DHS shutdown, the Senate is already moving on to the immigration-focused bill. Budget Chairman Lindsey Graham said the plan is for the Senate to move first.
We're going to have a very specific bill coming out before June 1st that will fund the Border Patrol and ICE for the entire presidency, the 3 years left of President Trump.
President Trump has endorsed the Republicans' immigration-focused bill, writing that Democrats will do their best to stop us. But we don't need their votes on this bill as long as Republicans unify and stick together. The president wants the immigration bill by June 1st. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
Congressman Eric Swalwell has suspended his campaign for California governor. This follows sexual assault allegations against the congressman. The Democrat announcing in the decision in a post on social media saying, quote, "I am deeply sorry for mistakes I've made in terms of judgment in the past." The allegations were first reported by the San Francisco Chronicle. They involve a former staffer who alleged Swalwell sexually assaulted her on 2 occasions while she was employed by him and when she was heavily intoxicated. Swalwell has denied the allegations, calling them serious and false. The congressman withdrawing from the governor's race amid pressure from fellow Democrats. And a separate federal probe now underway into allegations Swalwell hired a Brazilian woman as a nanny without lawful work authorization. Homeland Security saying no one is above the law, including a member of Congress. What is the impact on Iran with the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz? Is it going to cut off Iran's oil exports, a major source of its revenue? We talk to an energy expert after this break.
With Select Specs £6 specs, you can get 10 pairs of prescription glasses for just £60. That includes frames, prescription lenses, and delivery free to your door. And what makes this really special is each pair can have a different prescription. So it's glasses for everyone. SelectSpecs.com/£6. 10 frames, all with prescription lenses and delivery for just £60. You don't get that on the high street. Right now you can save an extra 5% with offer code CG5OFF.
This is how I keep my joints happy.
Omega XL is a powerful natural supplement backed by 40 years of clinical research. Take control of your pain, like Cynthia Bailey.
My knees in particular started giving me pain issues all the way back to my modeling days, from just running through airports, photo shoots. After taking Omega XL, I really started to notice how less stiff I was, especially my knees and my hip. Has Omega XL changed my life? Yes, I barely notice my joint pain anymore. Now I'm like literally sprinting through the airports. My secret is Omega XL.
Pick up the phone and call now to get this exclusive TV offer. Buy one Omega XL and we'll send you a second bottle absolutely free. You'll also get a free bottle of Vitamin XL D3. Buy one, get two free. A total value of over $115, all for just $49.95. You save more than 55% and shipping is free. Backed by a money-back guarantee and is not available in stores. Operators are standing by, so call now.
It's finally here, our second annual mega sale. This sale only comes around once a year, so take advantage of the best offers ever while you can. For example, save 50% on our Giza Dream bed sheets, as low as $29.98. And for the first time ever on TV, MyPillow mattresses and MyPillow mattress toppers, as low as $99.98. And you save 50% on our Lux Pure 6-piece towel sets. Regular $69.98, now only $39.98. And our best-selling standard MyPillows, regular $49.98, on sale for $17.98. Wait on it, mega sale, only $14.98. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to take advantage of our second annual mega sale. But wait, there's more. To make the mega sale even more special, when you order right now, your order's going to ship absolutely free.
Have you heard what's happening at Mathis Home? Our spring style event is going on now, with hundreds of options for your new dining room. This 52-inch table is a great deal. It's just $4.99 in your choice of finishes. Mix and match chairs to complete the look that's just right for you. You can also get it with a marble top or in a larger size for extra seating. We have your style in stock now with fast, free delivery. Get your new dining room and save at your furniture superstore, Mathis Home.
Wall Street opened lower today after weekend talks between the U.S. and Iran failed to produce a deal to end the war, raising fears of renewed market volatility. The Dow falling 198 points at the open and S&P 500 slipping 10 points and the Nasdaq dropping 53 points. All three indexes inched upward in the afternoon trading. Oil prices moving back above $100 a barrel as the U.S. Navy prepared to blockade traffic to and from Iranian ports through the Strait of Hormuz. Brent crude jumping nearly 7% to just over $101 a barrel, while U.S. crude rose more than 7% to above $103. President Trump warning that oil and gas prices could stay elevated through November's midterm elections. At least 2 tankers have been turned away from the Strait of Hormuz since the U.S. military blockade began. They're both believed to be bound for China. The information comes from ship tracking platform Marine Traffic. It shows a ship carrying oil destined for China turned back from the strait about 20 minutes after the U.S. blockade began. Another ship believed to be a Chinese oil and chemical tanker partially laden with oil was also turned back. Both ships were turned back as they were trying to exit the Persian Gulf at the narrowest point of the strait. Both were carrying false flags of land-docked African nations. And President Trump threatening China with 50% tariffs. The comments coming after the failed U.S.-Iran peace talks amid rising tensions over potential Chinese military assistance to Iran. CNN reports that China is now preparing to supply Iran with new air defense systems in the coming weeks. NTD's Flora Hua has the story.
China is preparing to ship weapons to Iran.
Well, if China does that, China's going to have big problems, okay?
President Trump on Sunday warned China could face staggering new tariffs if it provides military assistance to Iran, saying any confirmed support would trigger a 50% tariff. In an interview on Fox News Sunday Morning Features, Trump said the measure was aimed specifically at Beijing, adding, yes, China is included. He also said he had seen reports that China may be supplying shoulder-fired anti-aircraft missiles to Iran. Trump questioned the accuracy of those reports and said he doubted Beijing would continue such actions. U.S. intelligence cited in CNN's report reflects the same assessments the president was referring to. It says the shipment includes shoulder-fired anti-air missile systems known as manpads. Iran has previously used Chinese-supplied equipment against U.S. warplanes as part of asymmetric tactics. The report says the regime is likely to use similar systems again if the ceasefire fails. It remains unclear whether Chinese manufactured equipment was used to shoot down the U.S. F-15 fighter jet last week. Tehran says it used a newly deployed air defense system. President Trump said Monday the aircraft was hit by a handle-shoulder missile, a heat-seeking missile. The CNN reports also says Beijing has sought to transship defense supplies through third countries to conceal their origin. U.S. intelligence suggests China may argue such systems are defensive while maintaining a public stance of neutrality. China continues to rely heavily on Iranian oil shipments, making Iran a key energy partner. Analysts say Beijing is balancing support for Tehran with avoiding confrontation with Washington. President Trump is scheduled to meet Xi Jinping in May, with analysts warning confirmed support for Iran could strain ties. Just hours before the ceasefire, a New York Times report described Beijing's role as a last-minute push in peace talks. President Trump also acknowledged China's mediation role, while analysts note the Strait of Hormuz remains critical to China's economy. Flora Hua, NTD News.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met Holocaust survivors today ahead of the country's annual remembrance events. The Prime Minister saying Israel is hunting the enemy and prevented the Iranian regime from carrying out its plan of annihilation.
Who would have believed 80 years ago that our daring pilots, men and women alike, would be over the skies of Iran, over the skies of Tehran, and not alone, but together with the greatest power in the world, flying wing to wing in order to strike the foe.
Netanyahu referred directly to the survivors' experiences, saying Israel's military strength represented a fundamental change from the past. He vowed there would not be another Holocaust. One of the survivors said members of his synagogue community had urged him to convey their support to the Prime Minister. The meeting was part of a series of events held in Israel as the country observes Holocaust Remembrance Day. The occasion is marked by ceremonies, survivor testimonies, and nationwide moments of silence. Hungarian voters voting out Prime Minister Viktor Orbán after 16 years in power. Orbán conceding defeat yesterday, calling the outcome heartbreaking.
Good night, everyone, dear friends. The final outcome of the election is clear. The result for us is heartbreaking. But it's clear the role of governing was not given to us. I have congratulated the winning party.
Opposition leader Peter Magyar claiming victory, with early results showing his party leading by a wide margin. Magyar's campaign focusing on anti-corruption and domestic issues. He has pledged to rebuild Hungary's ties with the European Union and NATO. Turnout was reported at nearly 80%, one of the highest in Hungary's post-communist history. Orbán took one of his most defining actions during Europe's 2015 migrant crisis. According to the Migration Policy Institute, about 390,000 mostly Muslim illegal immigrants entered Hungary. Orbán then ordered the construction of a razor wire fence along Hungary's southern border to stop more migrants from entering the country. Speaking at a conference this morning, Magyar saying he wants to take over as prime minister as early as May 5th. He said his party received a never-before-seen mandate and vowed a complete regime change. And British Prime Minister Keir Starmer says Britain will not be drawn into the Iran war or support a blockade of Iranian ports in the Strait of Hormuz. The Prime Minister says Britain has minesweepers in the region and that UK military capability is focused on getting the strait fully open. Britain and France are now preparing to lead a possible multinational defensive naval mission.
I can confirm today that together with President Macron, I will convene a summit of leaders this week to drive forward the international effort we have built in recent weeks, bringing together dozens of countries to ensure freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. The summit will be focused on two things. First, diplomatic efforts to bring pressure to bear for a negotiated end to the conflict and for the strait to be opened. Second, military planning to provide assurance to shipping as soon as a stable environment can be established.
The Prime Minister says it's in the UK's national interest to stay out of the war. He also says the current ceasefire is fragile, but diplomacy is the right path. Starmer adding that Lebanon should be included in the ceasefire. He stresses the Iran war has caused great economic damage in the UK, that freedom of navigation is vital and must be restored with no conditions and no tolls. Joining us now to talk about oil prices and the global energy market is David Blackman, energy policy analyst and advisor and senior contributor at Forbes. David, good afternoon. So let's get straight to the point here. What's the impact of the blockade, specifically on Iran, the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz?
Well, if it's effective and stopping ships from going into and from Iranian ports, then it'll be an enormous economic hit. Because about 90% of trade in and out of Iran, happens through those ports, and so it's just the lion's share of the government's revenue. It's the lion's share of their economic activity, and it will be an enormous economic impact that will have major effects very quickly.
Okay, and Iranian officials are saying the U.S. will be nostalgic for $4 to $5 prices at the pump. Is there any validity to that? Are prices going to soar that much at the pump?
Well, I certainly think we could see $5 gas at the pump if this lingers on through the rest of this month. There's really, honestly, we're in a global market that's 8 to 10 million barrels per day undersupplied right now. So there's a lot of inertia behind, agitating for higher and higher oil prices, and that, of course, will be reflected at the pump. So it does seem fairly likely that if the longer this thing lingers, the higher prices are going to go.
But which economies are more vulnerable and which economies are less vulnerable? Is the U.S. Less vulnerable to this?
Not the prices. The price impacts, because crude oil is a fungible commodity set on a global market. Every country is going to be hit with the higher price impacts. The United States, though, and North America, combined with Canada and Mexico, we're pretty well energy independent, so we're not going to be hit with supply shortages. We're not going to have long gas lines at the pump. We're not going to have to ration gasoline and diesel like some other countries are going to have to do. But the price impacts are going to hit everyone, and I'm afraid they're going to hit everyone pretty hard.
All right, so roughly how many barrels are we talking about per day if the Strait of Hormuz is effectively blocked?
Well, before the war started, it was 20 million barrels a day coming, through there, which is roughly 20% of the global market. Now, Saudi Arabia and the UAE have made up for some of that, probably 5 to 6 million barrels a day, with their pipelines, that go to other outlets on the Red Sea and out into the Indian Ocean. But of course, the International Energy Agency's plan that's adding about 1.5 million barrels a day makes up for some of that. And before the crisis began, we did have a pretty significant surplus on the market, 2 to 3 million barrels a day. So the net is we're undersupplied right now by about 10 million barrels a day. And if the United States, and of course, we don't know the mechanics of how this blockade is going to work yet. If the United States is able to free up tanker traffic from the other Persian Gulf countries in the process of blockading Iran's exports, and we can get, free flow of those tankers coming through the strait otherwise, then that could, really alleviate the situation pretty quickly. But because of all the damage that has been done to the infrastructure throughout the Middle East now by the Iranian bombing campaigns and their drones, it's going to take months to restore production to where it was prior to the beginning of this conflict. And so I'm afraid we're in for higher gas prices for quite some time to come, and they're going to go significantly higher than they are today.
So President Trump saying that gas prices could be elevated through the November midterms. Do you think that that's very likely?
I think it's almost a certainty at this point. Yes, I think he was speaking after probably having been briefed on that aspect of things. He has a better handle on it than most anyone else because of all the briefings he receives. And I think that's a very realistic outlook. So I'm glad that the administration is not trying to mislead the public on that, because, it's important for everyone who drives a car and relies on it to get groceries, go to work, take your kids to school. have a realistic idea of what they're going to have to budget for that part of their daily expenditures going forward, because we're beyond sub $3 per gallon gas prices now for a long time to come, probably well into 2027 before we can really expect to see significant lowering of those prices.
Okay, can I ask you specifically about China? What's the impact going to be on China with this blockade? Will they now have to buy market-priced oil?
Yes. They had been able to buy this sanctioned oil from Russia, from Iran, from Venezuela prior to this year. The Venezuela spigot was cut off in January, and now they're 37%, I think, of the exports coming from the Persian Gulf prior to the conflict were going to China. So it was a very big piece of China's imports every day. And they are going to have to find alternate sources for that. And that's not going to be easy to do in a massively undersupplied market. President Trump said, well, China can send their tankers to Venezuela or the United States. And that's true to a limited extent, but everyone else is going to be trying to do the same thing. And so there's a limited ability in the United States to increase our exports. We can do it. There is some excess capacity, but it's certainly not going to be $10 million barrels per day. We're not going to be able to make up for that entire loss from the Persian Gulf. So there is some help, though, available in the United States. And I know all these countries are going to try to take advantage of it to the extent they can.
So amid these disruptions, do you think more countries will now have to buy from the U.S.? Do you see any silver lining to this at all, to the situation?
Well, yes. I mean, but there are other countries in addition to the United States that could have some excess capacity outside of the Persian Gulf. Brazil may have some excess capacity. Venezuela certainly does. There's significant production, coming from Guyana in South America as well right now. Unfortunately, Mexico's own energy industry has been so messed up by the current administration that country, which has so much potential, really doesn't have a lot of excess capacity. So the options are pretty limited. And it's just, everyone's waiting to see, as Keir Starmer said, all these European countries, the Asian countries that are net importers of oil, are really waiting to see with bated breath what happens in the Middle East. And right now, with this blockade and the stalemate between the United States and Iran, there's not a lot of relief coming. So they're all going to have to find ways to do with less.
Okay, I want to talk to you about fertilizer shortage, because we mentioned this last time, and you're saying there's a shortage. What's the situation right now, especially with the blockade?
Well, I forget the exact percentage. Something over 20% of global fertilizer feedstocks had been coming from the Middle East, prior to the conflict, and so now you have a pretty significant shortage in that realm of the world. India's had to shut down at least 15 of its fertilizer factories. We've had reports over the last week out of Indonesia and the Philippines of farmers there not being able to harvest their crops because fuel costs are so high, they just can't afford to run the equipment. And so they're going to be limited in their harvest to what they can do by hand. And that's only going to be a fraction of what they can grow. And that kind of a situation is going to be taking place. It's going to cascade throughout the global economy. And I think it's very concerning that we could have real food shortages in some parts of the world as early as next year because of it. It's like countries have reserves of oil. Many countries also have storage of food items. And so a lot of countries are going to be, now drawing down on their stores of food. And we get into next year, we could have some pretty significant shortages if this thing lingers on. So we should all be hoping and praying to get that strait fully reopened soon.
Okay, so if the Strait of Hormuz opens, then we won't see a food shortage in certain areas. How do we avoid the food shortage?
Yeah, so and it's hard to know right now, right? I mean, if you reopened it today, it's hard to know how quickly you would be able to restart those supply chains and get everybody supplied properly, right? And it's hard to know what the impact on prices would be. And so it's not such a crisis for this year's growing season, but if it lingers on, it could be the crisis for next year's growing season. The problem this year is whether or not the farmers can afford to get in and harvest the crops they are growing, because they fertilized their land and planted the crops before this began in most parts of the world, in the northern hemisphere. And so it's really, I'm more worried about next year's food supply than this year's, if this thing continues to linger.
Okay, it sounds like this could be a long-term story. We'll keep a close eye on it. But David, thank you for speaking with us.
Thank you.
NASA's Artemis 2 astronauts are back on Earth after a historic mission around the moon. Now the focus is shifting to what comes next as the agency prepares for a return to the lunar surface. More news after this. Stay with us.
Food. It fuels our bodies, nourishes our spirits, and brings us together. Because we all need nutritious food to thrive.
Food gives me energy and it also helps me focus.
But not everyone knows where their next meal is coming from. And 1 in 7 people in America face hunger. It's tougher than ever for too many of us. But the simple truth is, ending hunger is possible, and it starts with you. Call or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, to help families in your community facing hunger. Feeding America works from coast to coast with partner food banks, food pantries, and meal programs. Your monthly gift delivers food where it's needed most, puts fresh food on the table, and helps kids have healthy meals all year round, even when school is out.
You can see the difference with the kids when they're full. Food is everything.
Please call the number on your screen or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org. Give $19 a month. Your first gift can double in impact. And we'll send you this free canvas grocery bag as a reminder of how you're helping to end hunger for good.
When it comes down to it, it's about taking care of your family first and the loved ones that you need to provide for.
Food donations help me tremendously, and I'm very grateful for the food bank.
I have hope. The simple truth is, ending hunger in America is possible. You can help make it happen. The need is urgent. Call or go online now to helpfeedingamerica.org, and your gift can double in impact.
Shenyun Creations, the streaming platform from Shenyun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore shenyuncreations.com.
Is deep sea fish oil really healthy? Due to pollution in the oceans, most fish contain heavy metal elements and radioactive substances. That's why it's so important to choose a pure source of omega-3. Puritang green vegetable omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds, which are rich in nutrients and minerals. It effectively improves brain power and is beneficial to the heart's health. Puritang green vegetable omega-3. Eat 2 a day and you'll feel brand new.
A new White House report says the U.S. has a shortage of 10 million houses. White House economists laying out a plan to fix it. The analysis is part of the economic report of the president prepared by the White House Council of Economic Advisors. It finds there would be 10 million more houses in the country if home building had continued at its historical pace prior to the 2008 financial crisis. The report puts the blame on regulations on home construction, such as changing building codes, compliance costs, and zoning approval fees. The report estimates that cutting regulatory costs could help spur construction of as many as 13 million homes. It argues this could add on average 1.3% to annual economic growth over the next decade and support 2 million manufacturing and construction jobs. NASA's Artemis II astronauts are back on Earth after a historic mission around the moon. Now the space agency is taking its next steps toward returning humans to the lunar surface. Here's that story.
NASA is already looking ahead after a historic return from the moon. The Artemis II crew safely back on Earth and arriving in Houston to a rousing welcome. The mission wrapping up the first human journey to the moon in more than 50 years.
After a brief 53-year intermission, the show goes on, and NASA is back in the business of sending astronauts to the moon and bringing them home safely.
A milestone mission traveling farther than any astronauts before.
24 hours ago, the Earth was that big out the window, and we were doing Mach 39, and here we are back at Ellington at home.
The astronauts back with their families after nearly 10 days in deep space.
Being 200,000 plus miles away from home, like before you launch, it feels like it's the greatest dream on Earth. And when you're out there, you just want to get back to your families and your friends. It's a special thing to be a human, and it's a special thing to be on planet Earth. Thank you.
And the recovery effort now complete. USS John P. Murtha is officially back in San Diego after picking up the astronauts from their capsule in the Pacific Ocean. Now, focus shifting to what comes next. NASA setting its sights on Artemis III, the next step toward returning humans to the lunar surface. That mission expected to test critical systems, including docking with a lunar lander in orbit. Private companies racing to be ready, with SpaceX and Blue Origin developing lunar landers.
Artemis II is the opening act in America's return to the moon. Artemis III will start being assembled, and the next crew will begin preparing to play their part. As we return to the lunar surface, we build the base, and we never give up the moon again.
All of this laying the groundwork for something even bigger.
This mission moves us closer to exploring more of the moon, unlocking scientific discoveries, expanding economic opportunity, and laying the groundwork for the first human missions to have a sustained presence on the moon and for us to have our astronauts venture to Mars.
For NASA, Artemis II is just the beginning.
The U.S. Navy is moving to blockade Iranian ports in the Strait of Hormuz, but what threats are waiting there for them?